Welcome everyone to the interview talk on how to support trauma recovery. And I have here Kirsty Pearson. Kirsty is a family wellbeing and relaxed kids coach. She has 2 children herself and has been working in the domestic abuse arena for over 10 years. So yeah, that would it be 10 years? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, over 10 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. And became a relaxed kids coach 5 years ago. And we'll, in a minute, go through that whole story of how that happened. So my first question for you, Kirsty, is what is your own personal experience of trauma? And then how did that impact the work that led you to this whole new work?
Yeah. So in 2011, our first son, Thomas, was born, and he was born with a life-limiting condition, which led to him passing away in February of 2012. And that completely turned my world on its axis. Everything that I kind of believed about the world, my whole core values were completely changed. And it completely changed me as a person. And despite the fact that I'd done so much training as part of my professional work in trauma and how the brain works and how we respond to trauma, I hadn't really connected the dots that was what I was experiencing. And it wasn't until I came across the Relaxed Kids program and did the training. I remember very clearly being sat there in the training when we started talking about the brain, and it all suddenly clicking and falling into place and thinking, oh my gosh, this is really what's happening for me. This is where my anxieties come from. This is exactly what's kind of been going on. And I've really been able to use that knowledge to help me with the anxiety that I experienced as a side effect of the trauma. I have one example of a smell that always used to give me panic attacks. And I remember the first time it happened being in a shop in Wales, and I just knew that I had to leave the shop. I felt really sick and I had to get out, and I was experiencing a panic attack. And this happened a couple of more times. And then I started to think, because of the Relaxed Kids training, what is it that's triggering this for me? What is the reason that I'm feeling such fear here? And I was able to track that back using that knowledge that I had from Relaxed Kids to identify that it was actually a cleaning fluid that had been used at the hospice where my son passed away. And it was just triggering these really intense panic attacks. And from that, I was able to kind of see that, still, I smell that smell and my meerkat gets jumpy. He's very aware that that smell is around, but it doesn't descend into that full panic attack now because I've been able to learn what that smell meant for me and what it was triggering for me, and I've been able to help myself to feel safe around that again and to understand that much more. So yeah, it's really been life-changing having that knowledge.
Amazing. So now tell us, what is trauma and where is that trauma? In the mind, in the body? What is trauma?
So trauma is our emotional response to a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. And it can manifest itself in so many ways, both physically and emotionally. So people can experience panic attacks as a result. So their heart starts racing, they feel like they can't breathe, they can get headaches. It can be a real physical manifestation. And it can also lead to anxiety and worry and fear. And also a real sense of disconnection within ourselves, that kind of shock, disbelief, really not understanding where you are, what your position in the world is now that this has happened. And it can be really quite overwhelming and isolating as well. And it can be for any number of reasons. So I personally experienced it from the death of my son. So the loss of a loved one can really, contribute to those feelings of trauma and that experience of trauma. And domestic abuse is another big cause as well.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry, Carol. I was going to ask you to talk about the domestic abuse. So how does that link in with the trajectory of your life and work? What led you to working with the domestic abuse? Were you already, what led you? Because what are you? You're an independent domestic violence advisor. So
Yes,
how did that happen?
So I initially started off in the police. I was working as a community support officer within the police, and I had the opportunity to start to learn about domestic abuse more, and to start doing some visits to survivors of domestic abuse within the community to help them, and to identify any areas of need and to signpost them. And from there, it kind of just grew organically. I then got the opportunity, there was a position came up as a domestic abuse officer, which I went for, and went on to do that within the police for a number of years, which really helped me to kind of gain that experience and that knowledge and that understanding of the criminal justice system and how that supports families as well. And then from there, I really wanted to do some more kind of survivor focused work, so moving away from the criminal justice side of it and really supporting families in that recovery process. And I was very fortunate that a local charity was recruiting at that time. And I went for a position there and was successful, and was there for over 10 years, which is where I gained my qualification as an independent domestic violence advisor, and also many other qualifications in supporting families in their recovery from domestic abuse.
Yeah.
So it's been a very big part of my life.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. So what support or what tips or support can you give to somebody who's going through that situation? I know we're talking about trauma, but I have sort of moved a little bit onto the domestic abuse, because I just think it is such an important topic, especially now, that needs to be addressed. So what support could you give to someone, or someone who knows someone?
I think, if you are experiencing domestic abuse, and obviously the current situation has made it very, very difficult for people to access their normal support mechanisms, please do either contact the national charity Women's Aid, or there are so many amazing organisations and charities in every local area that can support you and that can help you with safety, with practical measures, and really help you to kind of see what options are available for you and where you can get support and help to be safe and to get what you need, to get that help that you need.
Thank you. So going back to the trauma, how does trauma impact our relationship with others and our relationship with ourselves?
So as I kind of spoke about a little bit about my experience, that kind of whole feeling of having your world turned upside down, and everything that you understood about it, but suddenly being challenged and feeling like it isn't true, can really lead to that feeling of disconnection with yourself, like you don't know who you are anymore, you're not quite sure what your place in the world is, or what you stand for, or what's happening around you. So it can really affect your relationship with yourself and your trust in yourself, your trust to, particularly when we speak about domestic abuse, that trust in your decision making. And if you've had somebody telling you that things are your fault and putting the blame on you, you carry lots of feelings of guilt and of shame, and that real kind of low self-confidence and low self-esteem, and that can then make you withdraw from other people, because if you're not quite sure who you are and how you're feeling and who's safe, and you don't have that trust in yourself and your abilities anymore, and you can start to withdraw from other people and feel like you don't quite know who's safe in the outside world either, who you can speak to and trust in. And particularly in terms of domestic abuse, that is a tactic that perpetrators use, is to isolate you from sources of support and networks that will be able to help you. So there is, you know, it makes it difficult to get that help. So yeah, there's that kind of shock, and it can lead on to severe anxiety, depression, which again all impacts on that relationship with yourself, how you view yourself, and then your relationship with others as well.
Amazing. And how can relaxation, mindfulness, relaxed kids support trauma?
Relaxed Kids is an amazing supportive tool. The knowledge that it gives you about your body and your brain and how your brain works and responds to anxiety and worry, because certainly at the minute we'll all be experiencing some level of trauma given the current circumstances, and having that knowledge of what's going on for us, it can really help to give us some of that power and control back when we feel like we've lost that. So it's really key for starting to learn what's happening for you, starting to trust in yourself again, starting to really check in with yourself, because that's one of the things that mindfulness and Relaxed Kids really helps you to do, is take that pause and say, how am I feeling? How does this feel today? Or how do I feel in my body right now? And how can I use that knowledge? What can I, how can that support me? And that starts to build that self-awareness, that trust again, that confidence in ourselves. And it also helps to build our positive mindset, and to really boost that confidence and start thinking about how we speak about ourselves, and how we speak about how we use language, and how that can impact on our mindset as well. So one of the big things is positive affirmations, and using those. And when you're in when you're in the thick of trauma, it can be really hard to suddenly think, right, I am awesome, I'm really great, I'm going to say that, and I'm going to believe it. That can feel like a step too far. But what Relaxed Kids does is give you that opportunity to start thinking about, well, hang on a minute, actually, what have I done well today? Rather than the things that I feel like I haven't done well, what have I done? And that might be that you've got up and you've made a cup of tea, or that you've got out of bed, on those really difficult days. It's just recognizing that that's an achievement for where you are right now, and focusing on those positives then start to lead to bigger positives. And suddenly you feel much better, and you think, oh my gosh, how did I get here? So yeah, it's a really lovely supportive tool.
I heard from a friend that, and it really stuck in my mind, that if you can just do one thing, make your bed, and it makes such a difference to the start of the day. And I always in fact, although I didn't make my bed today because I was so busy, and that's the first, but it's sort of like, it's a lovely thing to do, and it really, it helps reset the mind, and then coming at the end of the day to a made bed, and it's like a real sort of self-care thing that you're talking about, which I think is really a lovely tip too. So and in terms of children, your children, how has the trauma that you experienced impacted on your two?
Yeah, so I think they've kind of, I guess, grown up knowing about their brother, but because we have been able to use these tools and these resources, I've been able to communicate with them really openly about that, and so it's not kind of an elephant in the room. It's not this really big secret that we don't talk about that was really awful. It's something that was upsetting, but we talk about it, and we celebrate our son's life, and he's very much a part of of our daily life, and we use mindfulness all the time, and it's opened us up to some really important questions, and we've been able to use that experience, and they will ask us questions about it. They'll ask us how we feel, and it's led to some lovely discussions that we can then introduce the relaxed kids and mindfulness techniques in as well. But we use it every day. My little boy has found we do the visualizations every night, and that's the first thing he reaches for. Is his Aladdin's magic carpet is his favorite one. So
lovely.
Yeah.
And what do you feel, Kirsty, if you hadn't found relaxed kids, or hadn't found mindfulness, hadn't found relaxation, what state do you think you would be in? Would you be locked in that trauma, do you think? Now, what difference do you think it could have been if you hadn't you weren't on this journey of recovery?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think I would definitely still be locked in that trauma, because I had done, I'd been and seen a bereavement counsellor. We were very lucky that we had the whole support of the hospice bereavement team afterwards, but it was really that ongoing, it's that stuff that happens every day when those people aren't there anymore, when you can't see them all the time, and just having those tips, those mindfulness, being able to check in with myself and think, right, what's happening for me here? I just need to pause. I need to just take a step back from it all, and really that understanding of the brain, and the way that Relaxed Kids describes it using animals, I think for adults and children is amazing. It really, as an adult, you get it, and children do as well. So my little girl will often come and say, "Oh, my meerkat's feeling a bit jumpy today, mummy." So it's given us all that language. It's given us that ability to have those conversations and to do something about it as well, and to make that lasting change. So yeah, it's been massive.
And how can, I mean, I think in a way you have answered, but how can Relaxed Kids specifically support recovery from trauma?
So, as a tool in, every day, if there's a local coach near to you, go to the classes. There's adult classes as well, there's just relaxed classes for adults, and use those tools in your home, integrate them into your daily lives, pick little bits of it. It's amazing for creating moments of connection as a family. So when things are feeling a little bit frazzled, and when people, when your kids are certainly at the minute, when they're feeling the effects of not seeing their friends as much and having their worlds turned upside down as well, it just provides you with those tools to turn difficult situations into a real moment of connection and love, which is just really helps to kind of set you up.
Because from my understanding, I was reading a book on trauma, and like all addiction, they were saying, comes from trauma, and that it comes from like this disconnect with the self, and then feeling disconnect with others. So it's, I love the idea of this connection, connecting to the self, connecting to others, connecting to your children, feeling that connection to the world, to nature. So it's finding that connection.
Absolutely. I think that that love and connection is key to any recovery and to all aspects of life. When you can really love and connect with yourself and understand what's happening for you, your relationships with your children and with other people are much deeper, and they come from a place of love and connection. And that the ripple effect of that is massive, because that encourages them to then go out and love and connect with themselves and others, and it just goes on and on and on, and it's amazing. It changes how you view yourself and every aspect of your life and your connection with other people.
And so what are your top tips for families on their recovery journey?
So I would say always, if you need it, seek medical or professional advice. So for domestic abuse, get in contact with your local charities or your local organisations. They're different in every area, but there's always somebody that you can connect with and get that specialist bespoke advice for your situation. Same with bereavement, anything, get that help that you need, or if you need some medical advice around depression and anxiety, always seek that support. There's so many people out there to help. And be kind to yourself. That, take that time to not, it's so, we naturally focus on what we haven't achieved or what we're not getting right, what we're somehow bad at. Take that time to forgive yourself and be kind to yourself. We are all learning, and when you're experiencing trauma, that learning is much harder, and there's other obstacles in the way. So taking time to focus on what you have achieved and really being forgiving and kind and loving towards yourself. Recovery is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. Healing is a journey, and you will be on that journey for a long, long time. It might not be as intense, but I'm kind of 8 years into my bereavement journey, and there are still things that pop up every now and then that haven't popped up for me before. But now I have this whole toolkit that I can pull out and use to understand what that's about. So take time to find what works for you, explore different toolkits and different mindfulness techniques and different exercises that you can do, so that you've got that, you're building up that library of resources all the time for yourself. And really take time for you, take time for your family to switch off from all the noise of the outside world. Just create that real sacred space that's just about you and your family, and connecting and loving each other, just creating that really safe space. And yeah, really shifting that kind of focus from what you haven't done or what's not going so well to that, actually, what have we done today? What have we done that's been really brilliant? Because there will always be something. There's always something in the day that has worked well, and focus on that to finish your day with. And one of my favourite books is the Monster Handbook. The conversations that this creates and the insight that you can get into, I recommend that adults do this as well, especially when you're with your children. There's lots of lovely ways to explore how we're feeling in here, and different exercises, and giving those emotions names and characters and making them your friends. We often fear these big negative emotions because they're scary. They don't make us feel nice. But we have to make friends with them, because that's the way forward. That's the way we can move through them and take them with us, because they teach us a lot about ourselves. So yeah, when you're doing things like, we designed our worry monster using this book, which was really lovely, and seeing how my kids, how their worry monster looked to them, and how it might sit in their pocket or was really, really big and kind of stood behind them all the time. It opens up so many conversations. And yeah, do it yourself as well, and have that conversation. Say to your children, well, this is what mine looks like. It's really, really powerful to make it a family thing as well.
Yeah, I do love the idea of showing children that being able to almost personify their feelings as monsters, or give it a shape, give it a color, and then it just makes it a lot easier to understand this sort of like, what is a feeling. So that's the monster book does cover that. Amazing, thank you so much. Wow, what a massive amount of information there, and I really hope that's useful to anyone who is on a recovery journey. And really, congratulations to you, Kirsty, on your own recovery journey, and thank you for helping others with this incredible work, because I know, you know, unfortunately domestic abuse is on the rise, especially over this time it has been. And so I just think this work is so valuable, so important. And I'm just, you know, yes, I'm really, you know, for those who are going through the domestic abuse, but the children of the families in that situation, children who really don't understand it, but can pick up on the atmosphere or pick up on these feelings, and they almost get the brunt. I mean, it's just such an important, valuable thing for these little ones to get hold of a little bit of moment of relaxation. I remember there was a project a good few years ago now where a Relaxed Kids coach was working in, I think it was some sort of project, and every family, every child that of a domestic abuse family had been given a towel. It wasn't necessarily domestic abuse, it was just like really difficult situation at home, and this towel was their safe space, because very often they don't have their own room, or and they would just sit on this towel, and that would be their own little spot. So whatever they could do to have their own little space to connect, which is what you were talking about. So thank you so much. Amazing. Thank you, Kirsty.
Thank you.